Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Psychic TV and this show, Being Spiritual, with me, your host, Ashley Robinson. You can find me on Facebook at Ash Robinson Medium and TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and most of the other channels. It'd be lovely to see you over on those too. And of course, wherever you're watching this show tonight, thank you for doing so. I do hope you've subscribed on YouTube and you have liked our page and make sure you get all the notifications on Facebook. But think about all the other SPTV presence across all of those socials. Make sure you find us. And if you're on Facebook, join the fan page and engage with other SPTV people. It's wonderful to be back. It's been about a month since my last show on here. I would dearly love to know where you're watching the show from tonight. Do say hello. For those of you on YouTube, we should see your comments straight away if you participate in the live chat. I'll come straight through to the studio. In a moment, I'll try and give you a shout out, and it'd be nice to know where you're watching the show from, and in particular, if it's your first time. But thank you to all those that have come back. On Facebook, we have had a couple of strange techie things happen recently where we're not seeing all of your comments. Now, the best way is to make sure that you've liked the main page, Spiritual Psychic TV, SPTV UK at short name. Once you've liked that and you are subscribed to receive all the notifications, make sure that you are commenting on the live video, and hopefully we will get to see most of your comments this evening. But give us a test now. Let us know you're watching, where you're watching from, and we'll try and give you a shout out. Tonight is a spiritual philosophy show. It's a live, engaging chat show. You can ask us anything, ask you anything reasonable, but ask us anything spiritual. So start thinking about your questions. If there's anything on the bottom of your mind, questions about spiritual principles and philosophy, and what about this, as opposed to what are the lottery numbers, because we don't do fortune telling, well, not very successfully. And think about your questions and answers. We'll be able to do some of that. Tonight's theme is going to be a little bit about energy, and in particular the energy that creates this life, this incarnation, this experience, and in particular the energy experience in heaven. And I wanted to focus a little bit about the different nurseries within heaven, the different sort of spheres of heaven. And this follows some work I've been doing around some spiritual counseling. Good evening, Claire, on children that may enter the spirit world. So, yeah, talking about heaven, and get us any questions about any of that. So, Claire Colbeck on YouTube has certainly got your comments. Lovely to have you on the show tonight. Sally Worker, good evening to you. Mary Dixie, hiya. Lovely Terry Louise, thank you. Appreciate all your work, Terry. Livy, good evening. Hope everyone's doing well. Kind blessings, love and light. Yeah, lovely message there, Livy. We got your Facebook comment, which is great. And Claire, we got your Facebook comment too. Good evening, Ashley. Hope you're well. I'm doing well, thank you, Claire. Good to see you this evening. Lovely Joe on YouTube. Hello, everybody. Hiya, Joe. Mr. Phil Shaw, long time no see. It's only about 2 hours ago. Good evening to you also. Lovely Julie Caswell. Good evening, Julie. Julia Hay on Facebook. We've seen your comments there. Lovely hearts and stars. And Christine Davis on YouTube. Good evening. Rebecca Whelan on Facebook. We've got your comment there. Lovely heart. Thank you. Kelly Christine, we've got your Facebook comment there. Good evening, peeps. Smiley face and hearts. Hearts seem to be making their way through on Facebook, loves. We're loving the love. Jane Wilson, we've also got your comment from the Isle of Man. Good evening to you, Jane. Tish Pollux from sunny Florida. Hiya. Stacey and Bender, upstate New York. Are you there? Nicola Humphreys, good evening, and I hope we're all having a wonderful day. That's wonderful, Nicola. Thank you. Maddie J on Facebook, Hertfordshire, first time, and a special hello to you. Warm welcome. Suzanne Daly on Facebook. Good evening from Ireland. Hiya, Susan. Jessica Costello also on Facebook. So good. We're getting some Facebook comments tonight, which is lovely. Good evening, Jessica. I think we are slowly catching up, which is great. Haruna Lewis shared with my Facebook page and my own two group face pages for you today. Thank you very much. Honora, I hope I pronounced your name correct. Is that Honora Lewis? Lovely. I really appreciate you sharing this. It's a great way of us building our community. Sorry, Richard. Hi, Cindy. Jackie, Tonya, good evening to you. Hi, Gemma, Wendy. So Richard, our producer, is having to read out some of the names as they're not coming through to the production this evening. But we know you're there, and the producer has seen your comments. And Jessica, we've seen your comment too. Hiya. Hiya, Gracie. Chelsea. Hello, Chelsea. Hi, Marie Hawkins. And Melanie, Natalie, and Maureen. Good evening to you all. Wilson, lovely to have you all joining us this evening. A couple of new names and new faces as well. So hopefully you're starting to think about your questions, folks. And so there's a couple of things I'm going to sort of share with you, as we always do. We have a little bit of a chat and a nit nat about that. My teachings this evening are taken from Harry Edwards. Harry Edwards was a wonderful spiritual healer. We got Maureen there from Dublin in Ireland. Hiya. My granddad always used to talk about the power of Harry Edwards healing, and his sanctuary down in Shear in Surrey is one of the most incredible spiritual places I've ever been to. It feels so beautiful there, and there's a wonderful sanctuary, and you can feel these, I think they're iron hands of Harry Edwards. And you know, even as a sort of a piece of art, for me, there's something quite special about that. But Harry Edwards was also a medium, a physical medium, a spiritual, evidential medium, and he gave some wonderful teachings. When I was first learning to be a spiritualist medium, I loved reading his books, and I loved learning about the concepts in plain English that he used to talk about. So some of those teachings are from him tonight. And also my committee, my spirit committee, my group of guides. And for those of you that haven't watched the show before, I often refer to them as Spirit Exco, my executive committee in the spirit world. I do believe in almost like a boardroom style of where my guides get together. They look forward to this show, hopefully as much as you do, and they share with me their pearls of wisdom. Now, rather than them doing it live and dynamically, as a committee, they have blended their knowledge, their experiences when they incarnated on Earth with what they are learning in the halls of learning in the spirit world. And they get to the point of agreeing on to a certain extent on a concept, and then they give it to me as spirit teachings. But everything I give you is either, you know, I'll say that's from Harry Edwards. This is my humble opinion based on my experience or my guidance from my guide team. So Seven Ocean Skies says, hey, on Facebook, YouTube, good evening to you. So my humble opinion, what does that really mean? My humble opinion is my get out of jail free card. It's me saying that you don't have to agree with me. It's me saying that I believe it to be the truth. Otherwise, I wouldn't share it with you. I wouldn't tell you. I believe it to be the truth either because I've experienced it and I know it to be so. And often it's a combination of me continuing to learn. Over the last couple of years doing this show, I have taken so many spiritual steps, so much spirit advancement. We like to believe as good spiritualists, we do this every day anyway, and certainly as a medium, you're always developing, you're always investing into yourself, and my knowledge has continued to grow and widen, and indeed my opinions have been changed. And we dedicated an entire show to the concepts of heaven. We did another one on the concepts of God, where we spoke a little about energy, and we spoke a little bit about atoms. And the chair of my committee in the spirit world is a lovely man who was very special to me when he was alive, a man called Ralph A. Steadman. And for those of you playing the SPTV game of how many times will Ash mention Ralph A. Steadman, he was a very special guy, and he got me kind of hooked on the ability to teach philosophy, to talk about it, to thread it into our mediumship and our way of life. Ralph chairs this committee for me now, and amongst the kitty of committee, I'm learning more about my own guides, and I've started to share a few things about my guides. But the guide sort of stepping forward today, there's a guide that's had an experience in Virginia, America, as a Native American Indian, the early times of what would have been, I suppose, referred to as the British Empire, and growing different crops and plantations out there. I recognise him by the identity of Bear, or Running Bear. He helps me a lot with my mediumship, Bear, and he gives a lot of his philosophy, things that he's continued to learn. There's also a man called Sai, and Sai will be inspiring me to do some talking tonight. Sai was an ancient sort of folk, lived probably anywhere between 4,000 and 10,000 years ago in his last incarnation on Earth, amongst what we would refer to as sort of ancient Mongolia, around the time that Mongolian Empire was there. He was a bit of a medicine man while he incarnated this earth, and he continues to guide me from a healing point of view and stuff I'm learned. And then most recently, I've become aware of a guy who had a earthly experience right up until the 1970s. And he was a lecturer in the United States, and he was a scientist background, and he had a philosophy background. And he started to guide me a little bit too. So there's some of the characters that will be inspiring me to do a bit of talking today as well. And I'm going to be reading from a book by Harry Edwards. This one was actually my grandfather's. Rebecca says, absolutely love the Native Americans. Yep. It was £10 many moons ago. It was brought by my granddad, and it was designed by another wonderful man called Ray Branch. Julie says Ralph is a very special guy. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Ray Branch, a wonderful healer at the Sanctuary as well. And this book is entitled Life in Spirit. And the first thing I just wanted to read from it, it's only about a paragraph, folks, and it's chapter 6 in this book, and what it is called is How Things Are Made. And I won't go and read all of the sort of prelim to this, but it was about sort of Harry's own learnings and understandings. And when I spoke about God and energy and atoms, there was this particular section that stood out. So I'm going to read this extract, and then I'm going to give a little bit more of an understanding. And Harry is quoting from a lady that found themselves, two of his friends, John and Mary, they'd found themselves amongst a large party at something called the Temple of Nuclear Understanding. And they wanted to learn about how things were made in the spirit way of life. And most of the assembly were newcomers to the spirit life, just like John, but there were others who had made the change of life a long time ago and had previously shown no interest in the continued life motive. So this congregation then, they were all arranged around an amphitheatre, and in the centre was this teacher, and Harry described her as a lady of serene and dignified bearing. What a lovely way to describe someone. She was standing by a large circular table on which lay a shimmering mass of tiny, many-hued shapes. After a welcome to all the students, she would proceed with the simplest of explanations, and she selected one small fragment from the mass on the table. She described it as a little world, complete in itself. It is an atom, the smallest and simple example of matter, but it provides a vital service in our life, as it does on Earth life. It is called a hydrogen atom. Now, as she held it, she enlarged it big enough for everybody to see the movement within it. The teacher told the audience that earthly scientists had discovered over 200 different kinds of atoms, and that in the spirit life, there are many, many more. There are some of them, and she pointed to this scintillating mass on the table. Every atom is a highly organized energy structure, possessing very powerful potentials, as some minds on Earth have learned to use unwisely. She was, of course, referring to the nuclear fusion and the production of the hydrogen and atom bombs. The atom can be described as a powerful engine, possessing strong characteristics and purpose. But it is much more than an engine, for it has an intelligence which can command it to perform in a multitude of ways. It can be happy and contented, or becomes associated with other atoms whose intelligence and purpose is in opposition, deeply frustrated. The lecturer pointed out that in a simple hydrogen atom, human scientists found to be the most suitable agent for creating disruptive forces. Atoms, therefore, are individuals. They have their likes and their dislikes. They willingly blend with some other atoms when their properties harmonize with each other. They like to receive and experience the influence of some forces, but not others. Selecting three other different pieces she knew her audience would be familiar with, she showed the different internal movements within each atom. One was the element of gold and the other two of iron and tin. She placed the iron and tin elements together, and immediately there was seen to be some interplay of the moving electrons within both atoms. And with this also came a joining together of their intelligence and therefore purpose too. When the gold elemental atom was placed against either the iron or the tin atom, there was no interplay. They continued their normal functioning, independent and ignoring each other. The teacher developed her explanations further and demonstrated how a force, energy, could bring about a change in the condition of the element. To illustrate this, she showed how a flow of magnetic force could attract friendly elements when the flow was in one direction, but repel when the magnetic flow was reversed. It is hoped that the reader's time need not be taken up with further explanations of the effects of other forces on the elements heat, cohesion, gravity, electricity, light, and so on, but proceed to the time when the teacher introduced a new and very important factor, which was unknown certainly to me and also to John and others in the group. The listeners were told that energy was creation itself, and it was from this that all things came in both dimensions of life. Existence began with this energy, received character and purpose, becoming subjective to forces and other associations. It became subjective to the intelligently directed force of thought. Primarily, matter structures first obey the natural forces according to the law of cause and effect. For instance, how could heat bring about new properties in the operation of atomic function? Or, for instance, how glass can be shattered by certain sound radiations? Now, interrupting this narrative, John and Mary, as the teacher described the different processes affecting the substances, it seemed to him he was visualizing her thoughts, as if he was listening to her mind, and therefore was able to understand the meanings and the explanations without doubts arising, though there were questions he would like to ask. Mary nodded and said, "This is how we shall learn to understand each other, and you have done well to let your mind merge with the instructor so soon. It took me much longer." The lecturer stressed how important it was to know that everything has form, and form is a precise characteristic of energy. This applies to all things, material things, forces, light, colors, sound, vision, and thoughts. All forms of energy are associated in one way or another with other forms, and all can be influenced by each other, and particularly by attuned thought. There is a range of sound vibrations, all of which are recordable experiences, as shown on television. Sounds which can have more sensitive materials, increasing in a number of sounds as they ascend higher in the scales until they are too high for the human ear to receive them, but which can be heard by other ears, such as that of the dog. As the vibrations ascend in frequency, so they enter into the realm of light. They're also graded into recordable experiences from the infrared range up to the ultraviolet and beyond. Carry the process higher still, and it enters into the highest realm of organized force that is open to our experience, that of thought. It may not stop there. It is logical to assume it further ascends into the divine scheme of things. I want to stop there because for me, heaven is a place of pure thought. The difference between a human being and a corpse is the absence of that energy we call the soul or the personality. And it is the energy of the soul which continues to have a life after life itself, life after the change that our body goes through all that we call death. I think that although that starts to go into a scientific background, and obviously it was given as a lecture by a very intelligent lady, I hope that the bits I've covered off make sense to you in the same way they did to me. Everything is energy. Energy in itself cannot be destroyed or created, but it can change. Energy influences energy. Everything that we are made of, the atoms of life, within them are particles of energy. And it is those particles themselves who have an intelligence, and that intelligence is affected by thought. Go on, Richard just asked me a question. Yeah, carry on. No, so producer Richard is just telling me about someone who had died while they'd been having a scan of some sorts. They couldn't bring him back to life. Yep, they didn't realise it was still scanning. It was still so perceiving something. The brain was. So what Richard is explaining just again as energy. There was a scientific study of someone whose body ultimately went through that condition we call death, but the scanning machine that was scanning the brain and the energy of the body, the aura field of the body, was still picking up on that change of energy. Yeah, perhaps later, folks, have a research for that. Look online. So, what do you think, folks, then about what I just said there? Energy, atoms, intelligence. That every single piece, every particle within every atom is in itself intelligent, affected by thought. Rebecca says yes. So I'm assuming you like what we were saying, Rebecca. Um, when I concentration is intense tonight. Yeah, thank you, Joanne Lewis. When I work as a spiritualist medium, I believe that I'm communicating with that energy. When I'm sending someone love and light and absent healing, I'm asking for that energy to be direct. For those that know me very well, you may know that I'm studying to be a minister of spiritualism, a minister of religion. And as part of that training, it requires formal modules and elements. And one of the courses that I've just completed formal training in is that of a spiritual counselor run by Wimbledon's Leslie Moulton. And I was having a great chat with Leslie as we do on Monday. Oh, good evening, Mum and Dad. Late on parade. And Leslie and I were talking about. Thank you, Rebecca. Agreeing. We were talking about healing, and she was saying that deep down as a teacher of healing, she doesn't really like to refer to herself in terms of labels as a healer because she is a channel. And everything that she believes, everything that she teaches, talks about us channeling the energy of the divine, the energy of the universe. The healer becomes an instrument or a channel for that. And as a medium, I agree with that. We've spoke about the spiritual gifts, folks, haven't we? We spoke about the fact that heaven exists as a place of pure thought, and they can communicate as an intelligence energy to influence our thoughts, and that we as mediums become instruments as mediums for them. Amy says her aunt is a minister. That's lovely, Amy. Tell us where she is, in which part of the world. That would be nice to know as well. And of course, folks, if you're interested in where we're all located, don't forget to head over to SPTV UK, the spiritual directory. You can find your local mediums and healers and indeed ministers. My page. At Ash Robinson Medium or at Wimbledon Spirit, my church page, you'll find links there. But SPTV UK, that brings up the whole fantastic website. There's an Aladdin's Cave of information there and training academy, as well as the directory. A wonderful event section, folks, with lots of online events and in-person events, and also our awards. So there may even be an advert for that later. But first ever SPTV Awards. I've been honoured to have received some nominations from some of you good people. So if you have the time, folks, head over to SPTV UK later. Please register yourself as a voter and vote for your favorite presenter, your favorite medium, healer, your favorite church or center. I consider myself blessed to have been nominated by a few of you, and there's a whole crew of wonderful souls that have been nominated. So yeah, please do. Jane Wilson says, I sometimes see spirits or black shadows. Thank you for sharing that, Jane. And folks, we're going to talk a little bit about heaven in a minute, a bit more about heaven and the nurseries within heaven. My segue to that was this concept of energy and heaven being a place of pure thought and its atoms. I want to do another show on healing where we talk about that instrument of healing and how we sort of direct that energy, but just recognizing that we're made of energy, and goodness knows how many, I don't know if we've got any scientists watching tonight, how many atoms within us as human beings, all of them self-containing particles, all of those particles being intelligent elements themselves. It's quite incredible. And I think that, understanding that the spirit world is made of exactly the same stuff, energy, love, is quite lovely. So if you've got any questions, folks, about atoms, energy, the making up of the universe, then do throw them in. We can always go back and read a little bit more from that. Otherwise, I just want to spend the last 15, 20 minutes talking about heaven, because people, probably the most frequently asked question. Tonya said, I've had like a dark energy around me, Amy. Or any advice? I didn't know if he was telling Amy that for a second there, Tonya. If you feel there's a dark energy around you and you are aware of it, Tonya, tell it to leave. Light is always more powerful than darkness. In a dark room, you can extinguish darkness with light, but you cannot take out light from darkness. Light is more powerful. You stand for love, light, Tonya, and you have the ability to extinguish any dark energy around you. Also, you can send a very simple pray with a positive affirmation and intention. And if you continue to be concerned, use that directory, get in touch with your local spiritualist, church, minister, or circle leader and ask them for some help. And I would probably add the caveat that you should never have to pay for things like that. I'm sending you love, light, and healing right now if you want me to, and it's free of charge. It's a gift of service. Always be careful of people saying they need to charge a huge amount of money to do these so-called cleansings or anything else for you. Of course, if people like ministers and mediums are having to travel out to your houses, there's an element of you paying to compensate for their time or their travel expenses. But in the vast majority of times, you will find that spiritualist churches and centres will have people within them that will say a simple prayer for you and work with you to remove any concept. But remember, we are powerful beings ourselves, Tonya, so we can remove that. Okay, so heaven. Most frequently asked question I'm always asked is, what is heaven like? And I always say it's anything you need it to be. It's anything you want it to be. Heaven is a place that spirit beings, our loved ones, don't want to leave. A lot of people talk about missing elements of their physical life and incarnation and physical experiences. Even people that have died in tragic circumstances, that have had very short or brief experiences, find themselves in such a wonderful place of love and light that they don't want to leave. And I think that for many people, even without the need of a physical body, the spirit realms, the spirit world, heaven becomes a place that you almost, because it's thought, where you imagine that you're almost still going through that sort of 3D experience and everything is in that sort of third dimension. And I'm going to talk a little bit in a minute about reception into heaven. I often, as a medium, get confirmation from people. They talk about who met them, not just a light on the other end. So I'm just going to take some water and then take a question from Joanne. Sorry, coughing. My hay fever has been really bad today, and really odd. This room smells really perfumey this evening. I don't think there's any perfume that's been sprayed. Well, it'd be great if my wife can confirm later that she's not sprayed anything. There's no air fresheners. That would be a nice little gift from Spirit. Right. Joanne Lewis says, I am aware that the brain has an effect on every part of our body, and that negative thought is able to create a negative effect on your body, so your body is reactive to the energy of thought. Yeah, absolutely, Joanne. And it's also reactive to positive energy. I think that to a certain extent, you can wish yourself well. You can certainly wish yourself to be sick or poor. There's an element of looking yourself in the mirror and saying, I am well and feeling well. I am beautiful and feeling beautiful. Um, but there's also the limit of the human language. I will be well or I'm getting well is not as positive when it comes to affirmations as I am well. I am safe. I am secure. All of those things. So, yeah, positive thinking, positive affirmations, positive intentions. And, I do believe we get what we put out as well. So, thank you for that. Julie Caswell says, years ago, our pet hamster was dying and Julie felt her energy leave her as she passed. I also experienced this with a pet rat being put to sleep by the vet. The vet wanted to know how I knew he had gone. Another great story there, Julie, of you going through that experience. Thank you for sharing. My dad says there are approximately 7 times 10, 27 atoms in the average human body. Dad, great clue. Did you know that? I'm assuming that someone like Alexa or your good friend Google has helped you. This is an estimate for a 70 kilogram adult human male. Generally, a smaller person would contain fewer atoms. A large person would contain more atoms. So that's from obviously an article, April 5th, 2019. Thanks, Dad. Appreciate the research. We should have you in the studio. We could have subtly introduced it. Princess Peachman's Nikki Booth. Good evening to you on YouTube. Princess says, I felt a weird wave of energy so strongly I sat bolt upright. It felt like a hug when my husband passed a few months later. The nurse told me he had passed away. Was this hugging me? Princess Peachums, if you believe it was, then I think there's every chance it was. I'm not working right this second as a spiritualist medium. I don't have anyone claim to be your husband as a communicator, but my great belief is that wherever spirit beings can, they like to influence us. And if you had that feeling, what I would say to you is the difference between a conscious thought, subconscious thought, and a spirit thought is the vividness. So when you say about this hug, did you have a vivid, bright image in your mind or vivid feeling within your body in the same way you did when someone physically hugged you? That for me would be the difference between a memory. As you talk about it now and you remember the experience, or if you remember what you had for dinner last night, our memories and our subconscious and our conscious mind, it's a very different feeling and experience to that vivid image or experience that spirit can put in our mind. And as an early learning medium, that was the difference that I was told to look for in the mind within the mirror within the mind, or the blank canvas within the mind's eye. I always point to that. I don't know why I do. I think I've watched too many Cyclops movies. Recently saw a diagram. They say that the pineal gland is actually probably right in the sort of the middle of the head somewhere. They think that's the proper place of the mind's eye. But I always sit up here around the chakra. Princess says, I was moved from his bedside moments before he passed. To be honest, I think they turned his oxygen off and didn't want me to see it. Always plays on my mind if I knew he was there. I think as soon as he would have had the opportunity, Princess, he would have. And you were closest to him. And if you've got that vivid feeling, then thank you for sharing that. And I see no reason why it wouldn't have been the case. It sounds very vivid, very nice. Amy says, I love the movie Contact. I like to think our soul goes to another plane until we are called to come back to this plane. That's a nice way of looking at Amy. And when I spoke about the birth of my recent son, Oscar, who was born on the 31st of March, there was a poem I read from a lady called Shirley Monaco out of church, where she spoke about Oscar knowing his two brothers, Ethan and Noah, before they experienced their incarnation on earth, about they leaving each other at heaven's gate. So I think, we come from heaven, we go back to heaven. Give me one moment, folks. Huge apologies today. Really been affected. I feel as if this whole room has become alive with like a meadow of flowers. It's one of the most unusual experiences. I don't know, there's no obvious sign of I'm looking around for it now. Always look for the super normal before you find supernatural. But it's quite incredible. I was checking behind me now. I see no obvious reason, but it's getting stronger. The sensation of flowers. It's probably, if it is spirit, a practical joke. Make me look silly. Right. Anyway, Shavonna Rook. Hi, Ashley. Sorry I missed the beginning. However, I needed to hear the positive thinking message. Well, Shavonna Rook, welcome to the show this evening. And we're just about to go into the nurseries of heaven. And I want to introduce you to another little of my philosophies from Mr. Harry Edwards, where he talks about the nurseries of heaven and his friends John and Mary, who are sitting on the portico. I imagine that's some sort of porch. If anyone who speaks better English and better grasp of the English grammar than me can tell me what portico is, then I would dearly like to know. But anyway, they were sitting there and they were reliving their excursions into the way of life in spirit, when Mary, thinking aloud, said to John, "Yes, I think that is so. My mind is clear, but I seem to have wanted to know what is necessary to explain the things I have learnt here. It is not storing up knowledge mechanically, as one would have to set out to learn so much as a task and repetition. I seem to understand why the flowers in our garden are so much more beautiful here than they are in other gardens we see. And this only can be because we love our own flowers more than we do others, for they present to our minds unparalleled loveliness." A little later on, Mary said she would like to visit the nurseries where children are received as they enter into their spirit lives. And so it was they found themselves going through a very lovely countryside. Now, all of this, folks, I imagine was in a sort of, if you could imagine, a meditation state. They go through and they found a very lovely countryside. The trees were verdant and graceful, the grass a rich green and interspersed with streams and brooks. They came into view groups of small dwellings, not very big or tall. There was no massing together of these wee dwellings, for they were spread out over the land as far as the eye could see. Here and there was a graceful yet majestic building, which our two visitors learnt were colleges or halls of learning for young people. Children could be seen playing around the little colonies of the children's houses. Entering into one of these little communities, they watched the children engaged on the lessons and handicrafts. The style of the small children's houses varied, as if the children had chosen their own. Some resembled the fairy story pictures the children remembered from their fairy tale books. Some had thatch roofs, twisted gables and lattice windows. Some of the houses were more in the spirit style of house, with shaded marble-like walls of different colours. I'm really struggling with my words today. The size of the houses seemed to be suitable for the age of the children living within them. Discussing nursery life with a lady helper, they learned in the houses the children were looked after by older child, a big brother or sister. They stayed in the cottages until the time arrived for them to enter into one of the colleges or into some new direction of life. Answering a question about how quickly the children learned what they had to do and how they grew up, they were told because they were young minds, were unconcerned with all the detail of living as in earthly life, there was no question of conforming to the weather, dress, waterproof clothing and boots, nor for the need to eat or conform to time and discipline. Their minds were free to be happier, to wander, to take in new ideas and learn the way to express themselves in rhythmic movements, dancing and expressing joy of gaining knowledge within the freedom of life. Naturally, the children's minds were free to accept the lessons of the essential purposes in life, the study of flower life, the nature of life in the animal kingdoms, to which they frequently went, and also to visit the homes of the birds and indeed all the forms of the living creation. A child could have a pet, in whom the child's love could be reciprocated. It was seen that the natural animal friends of children mainly followed the species of those who were pets before the children left the earth, small animals as a rule, the rabbit, cat and dog being their favourites. Perhaps it was the different nature of boys to like big dogs and ponies, even snakes and rodents as their favourites. Some of the children had their special pets to live with them. There were many other animals, like of that John and Mary had never seen before. They had their genesis in spirit, with minds akin to those of the children of whom they were able to converse. They comprehended the children's faults and could converse or understand each other. It seemed the animals could answer the children's questions. In the animal lands, the children had their favourite animal to love, and here their leading favourites were lions, horses, and bambies. They would be on the watch for the time when their young friends would arrive and to greet with an unmistakable affection for their particular boy or girl between whom a love feeling had been aroused. These love attractions between children and animals lasted long enough after the child had grown into maturity. Each colony was looked after by a nursery mother, nursery father, or both. And those that John and Mary met radiated charm and appeal and confidence and wisdom. They would be able to appreciate how a child mind would react to something new and would bring them mental cooperation down to the level of what the child they were helping. When the children had arrived at a stage when they were no longer children, some were encouraged to stay in the nurseries. We've purchased a more sophisticated house to live in, but at the same time to act as the helpers and teachers for the younger ones. The transition from a child towards adulthood was gradually made. The first real change was when the boy or girl went to college. The earlier part of their experience was devoted to explanations on the purpose of life and how service could best be given to God and his children. A girl who showed an aptitude for art and patterns would have a trial period in the College of Art and Design, for example. There was this section when it introduced young lives into the mysteries of pottery and porcelain. The mind of an inquisitive nature and anxious to know the origin of things went to one of the many college departments concerned with science. It'd be here, under patronage and kindly tutelage, they would serve the apprenticeships before entering more fully chosen into the way of life. John and Mary were told of another way the children were served, particularly those who retained memories of their parents, relatives, friends, and homes in their earthly life. The teacher would be able to keep these memories kindled, telling the children of that which happening at their home and of the love that flowed out of them from their families, and show them pictures of their loved ones who still loved them. It was explained that memories of both young and mature people tend to fade until recollections of the previous life became dimmer and dimmer and no longer interested the mind, which is memory. Indeed, one teacher told them of a number of philosophers and scientists who held the view that a previous life never existed at all, and all talk about it was fanciful romancing. Just the same as in earth life, there are those that think that life ends with the grave or the cremation. Some people are kept in some kind of preservative, only to come alive on a day of judgment when they will be divided into the saved and the condemned, the latter enter of agonies of helpless torment, while the former will be marched off to praise sing in paradise. So long as the love link exists from those still in the earth life for their dear ones who have preceded them, then it is the purpose of spirit to maintain that love in preparation for the time of reunion. And it was with Mary waiting for the arrival of John. At one time, Mary said, "All the children we have seen are able to walk, run, and play. Can you tell me about babies?" The teacher replied, "Let me show you. Let me show you where the babies are received and cared for. But there is one more general thing you should understand. In earth life, growth has to conform to the time standards regulating growth. It would not be right to grow up too quickly, or the physical laws would be frustrated and the person would grow up weak. In this life, there is no such physical brake on growth. It proceeds naturally and comparatively with the child's mental growth. Thus, when a baby without consciousness arrives, it progresses in much slower than the time when it can see and say, 'I want.' After this, as it accepts the permitted and acknowledges that which is not permitted, as soon as it knows the difference between right and wrong, then its mental growth develops more quickly, rapidly, and within this the body, which of course simply a physical vehicle for the spirit self on earth. They arrived at the most beautiful, shining, alabaster-like build, in richly ornamented, rising up to a shining dome from which thousands upon thousands of rays of silver light beamed out in all directions. These rays penetrated through the spirit realm, linking up the life force on earth, and it is by these life force of the babe, but it is ever so young, it is brought to spirit life. How can that be? Asked Mary. As soon as the life force of the father joins in with that of the mother, in other words, at conception, there is born a new life, ready to take its place in fulfilling its destiny. Even if by reasons of the mother's health or by unnatural artificial means the baby's life is terminated, it is only the physical existence and experience which ends. The young and immature life does not end, but is received here and brought under warm and loving care. The fetus grows and develops well, taking far, far less time than it would need in earthly life. It will need nourishment, for it is still partly physical. It has not yet reached that stage of advancement, for it has to accept spirit awareness. As soon as the eyes open and the ears can hear, as soon as it can use its voice and its hands can hold a finger, as soon as its mind through its brain becomes aware of these things, it is able to receive strength to accept spirit growth and development. Then the need for the equivalent of physical nourishment is dispensed with. Now, I'm going to finish there, folks, because I think that I could carry on reading that all night. But I wanted to cover that bit about the nurseries of heaven, because in sharing such blessed news about my newborn baby, Oscar, who, as I say, was born on the 31st of February, I take into account what NHS in the UK, the National Health Service, would call failed pregnancies. And I believe there were conceptions, just as described in that book, because I've had evidence from them. My wife and I have been together almost 22 years, and we've been married for the last 17. And for 10 years, we biologically tried for a baby. I won't go into too much depth for that. That's a show for after hours, and probably not one my wife would be happy talking about. But we tried for a baby, and we believe we conceived. Sadly, things weren't right within my wife's body and health at the time, and those babies never walked on earth. But I've always believed that from that point of conception, that start of infusion of energy, and I've had that evidence from the spirit world. And I love the way that this book talks about that, and that growth and that development and that continuation of life after life. I love the idea of thinking about Ethan and Noah and Oscar at the point of conception coming to, but there perhaps being some sort of spirit being aware of each other, of Ethan being here on earth, but perhaps when he was in heaven in another existence, before that point of conception, being aware of these souls that may join. And of course, my own personal opinion is that reincarnation and continued incarnation is possible. So it's a personal opinion, not necessarily linked to spiritualism. And I want to sort of summarize or sum up. I want to sum up really, and before I get your questions in for the last sort of 10, 15 minutes, well, I suppose it's a bit of an advert, but one of the amazing things that we're able to do at SPTV is broadcast out to all of you on Facebook and YouTube today. For those of you that come back to the show, you'll know that every evening there's something for you to tune into. Now, on a Sunday morning, there is the Divine Service, broadcast live from Women of Spiritualist Church. And in September, as part of our Divine Service, my son Oscar will receive his naming service, otherwise known as a christening or baptism within sort of other faith and religious groups. And again, those that know me really well, and for those that don't, my wife is half Irish. She's got an Irish Catholic upbringing. She considers herself a Catholic. She's a very good spiritual healer. She studied for 2 years with the United Spiritualists to become a spiritual healer. She supports everything I do. But if you asked her for a label and for her religion, like the census did recently, she would put down Catholic. I would say that at the very least she's a spiritualist Catholic or a Catholic spiritualist, but she's happy with the label Catholic. She sees nothing incompatible with her belief system within spiritualism. So our son Oscar will be baptized at the Catholic Church after the naming service at the Spiritualist Church. And between our children, when we had to do the census for Ethan and Noah, one went down as a Catholic spiritualist, the other one went down as a spiritualist Catholic. Labels are very much a human thing. The important thing is the love and the value and the ethos we give them. So watch out for that divine service in September. Tune in on Sunday mornings, watch them on replay, and you might just see a bit of a naming service at the very end of one of those. So we've spoke about energy and atoms and heaven, the nurseries within heaven, heaven being a place we need it to be or want it to be. And I love the idea about those halls and schools of learning. What do you think, folks? What are your experiences? For those of you working at mediums, what evidence have you received which tell you a little bit about heaven? And I'll be really interested if you've got any particular questions. Richard, would you like to run any adverts before we take the questions, or do you want to do them at the end? Okay. Good. There's a few questions coming in, and we're just going to give you the adverts. So just hang fire for a couple of minutes, folks, and they're all automated. Stand by.
Tomorrow night on SPTV, we offer a free evening of mediumship with some of the UK best-serving mediums and spiritual advisors. Our show starts from 8 p.m. UK time. Join us this Sunday from 11 a.m. with our divine service broadcasted live from Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. Each week we have a guest medium who demonstrates their mediumship abilities to those in the church and viewers online. The service consists of a prayer, healing, spiritual reading, and a demonstration of mediumship. Spiritual Psychics TV presents an holistic fair on Saturday the 11th of June. Offering the best in spiritual readers and market stalls. Join us from 10 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. Throughout the day there will be many stalls such as natural polished crystals and stones, qualified complementary therapists offering spiritual healing. This exciting day is being held at the Waterlooville Community Centre, with plenty of free parking. A wide range of handmade products including candles, oils, jewelry, naturally organic and vegan soaps, creams, and bath bombs. Not forgetting the kids, we have face painting and a bouncy castle to enjoy all day. For those who are interested in potions, spells, and essentials oils, then we have a stall for you here as well. Maybe you're looking for a reading, be it mediumistic, palm, or tarot. 11 readers are available throughout the day. Refreshments such as drinks and light snacks are being provided by the 1940s Tea Room from Havant. Plenty of free workshops, talks, and a demonstration of mediumship are also planned during the day. For more information, please visit mbs.spiritualpsychicstv.online.
Spiritual Psychics TV is hosting the first annual recognition of achievements, acknowledging those who dedicate their lives to a spiritual act of kindness. Spiritual Psychics TV, bringing spiritual people together.
Hello, folks. Welcome back, and thank you for bearing with the adverts. Last 10 minutes or so of the show now. Opportunity to take your questions. So, ask Ash anything. Savannah Rook. Yep, no worries. It's good you're back. Sam Morgan, how do I get rid of negative doubt over past masters? Mind over matter, ultimately, and give it back to the universe. Sam, say your version or combination of a prayer. Ask the universe to take it away. If there's particularly someone in the spirit world that you know that can do that for you, then ask them to do that. And ask your local spiritual church centre healers to continue to send love and light your way. Absent healing is very, very powerful. You've got people listening tonight that will do that with your permission, and I can do that. And the Sunday Divine Service, we always ask for names, so we can do that. You can do it. Mind over matter. Thanks, Sam. Gemma Mott, my son died at birth. Does he grow up in the spirit world? Yes, I believe so, Gemma, and that's exactly what we were talking about there. Would have been well met and received by friends and family, the equivalent of nursery houses, and they would have been looked after at the age and got them to a point where they were able to advance, and at some point would be able to give you evidence in theory of their life after that life. Very sorry that your son had died at birth. Thank you for sharing that with us all. But yes, I'm certain that they would grow up in the spirit world. Depending on how old they want to then grow up would be entirely to them, because they don't have the limits or shackles of a physical body, but they'd be nurtured at the point of almost going through that baby, just as we heard about from that Harry Edwards teachings. Thank you, Gemma. Fiona says, see lots of faces before I go to sleep every night. Yeah, I mean, I assume you've got like curtains up and you've got double-decker buses driving past your house, Fiona. When you say see faces, I'm joking. Spirit faces, and if they're welcome and they make you feel comfortable, great, lovely that you see that, and I hope that you get a good night's sleep. Melanie. Question: what is your experience with our ET families? Do you connect with them personally? Thank you. When you say ET, do you mean extraterrestrial, Melanie? So ET, great film, one of my favorites growing up. If you're talking about my experience with extraterrestrials and I connect with them personally, I don't. I mean, I've got a great interest in aliens. Ancient aliens and ancient civilizations in particular is something I love researching. And if you go back on some of our playlists, you will see the origin of the ancient show with Kate and Birgitta. Some really good conversations there about ETs and aliens. And one of my guests was a guy called Malcolm Robinson from Strange Phenomena Investigations that's just got back from a UFO conference in Scotland where he's been talking about aliens and UFOs. So I predominantly connect with people in spirit. They're all human beings, as far as I know. Well, they've certainly had recent experiences as human beings. And the questions I put up there about, life on other planets and stuff, I've never had any reason to believe there isn't other forms of intelligent life out there. I personally have not had any experience with it. Thank you for asking. Maureen says, why is it I wake up at 3 a.m. most nights? Again, like I'm still doing hunting for this perfume. Look for the supernormal. Is there, is it when the off license closes at 3 a.m. and that's round the corner? Is there the time the foxes like to come out and make love in your garden? Is there a bird that jumps on your house and uses it as a trampoline? Once you've ruled out all the supernormal, look around the significance of it. Often when I've given private readings, spirit communicators talk about particular times. They talk about, if someone has been struggling to sleep, how they've perhaps influenced that person in the sleep. And they might, give specific times. They might say, well, at 21 minutes past 3 o'clock in the morning, I know you were struggling to sleep and I was close to you. I was with you. I was aware of you. And sometimes it's the significance of it. You often see the numbers repeated. I'd be interested, Maureen. Is it always 3 a.m. on the dot you're waking up? Is it 3:30 or 3:33? All threes. Because there are all sorts of meaning in numbers. My wife's always fascinated by numbers. And I was reading something that she had put out about numbers the other day. And the thing about 3 was the equilibrium. Mind, body, and spirit focus on all 3 aspects. Don't neglect one for the other when you see this number. So 333 in particular, that's significant. But yeah, mind, body, and spirit. Focus on all three. So maybe there's a little cue for you there, Maureen. Maybe that's the time your off license closes, yeah, and it's waking you up. So look for the supernormal. Otherwise, there could be a other explanation. Thank you, Maureen. If we got any other number nerds, as I call my wife, that know about this sort of stuff, then yeah, please comment in the chats. Liz says, do you think souls return in another life as a reincarnation? I do. It's my personal belief that we are all capable of reincarnation. It's my belief that many of us do. It's my belief that not all of us do, and you don't have to. I think some might go many, even thousands of life experiences. Other people might do it once because that earthly experience was, well, they got everything out of that experience that they needed. Now, as a spiritualist medium, I believe it's the evidence of the personality of the person from the life they last reincarnated. That's what's communicated. And then I have to ask myself, is that person communicating personality? And let's pick on someone, right? My granddad Dale, because he lives in the spirit world now. Granddad Dale comes through and he says, Ash, it's me, it's Granddad Dale. So that he's giving me evidence of his personality. He's making the images so vivid, I know it's spirit as opposed to a memory. Now, if my granddad Dale as a soul had previously reincarnated, what's to stop him, now he's back in the spirit world, of giving any evidence from any of those lives or any of those reincarnations? Now, the question I have doesn't necessarily come with an answer, because as a spiritualist medium, I've never had evidence from a personality go on and talk about previous lives. When you start to get to your guide level, I introduced some of my guides, earlier this evening. They all talk about their last experience as a human being to me. Because when I try and get them to identify themselves, as a good medium, you always talk, test your communicator, prove your communicator, verify your communicator. My spirit guides often say, we don't even care for names and labels, but you may call me or you may refer to me. This is what I look like. So I think you kind of get a glimpse of that. There's been some interesting talks about, the concept of ascended masters and mistresses and, spirit beings, perhaps being more aware of that. But we also know, don't we, from the conversation on atoms, that it could all just be atoms experiencing different things for themselves and then forming in different groups as part of that intelligence and desire to form that personality. So Ashley Robinson, incarnation on planet Earth, all of these atoms, which probably twice as many as my dad said, because I'm well over the 70 kilograms, that group of atoms and energy doesn't necessarily incarnate, because most of it doesn't survive the change the body goes through. Is called death. There's only some of the energy and atoms that survive that personality. It's that spirit self merging with the physical self. So maybe there's a bit of it which always continues, maybe just a fingerprint. So Liz, in answer to the question, yes, I do think souls return in another life as an incarnation. That's my personal opinion. I gave the example of my own children, who I believe may have known each other as souls, and as a soul group have chose to incarnate with my wife and I and our family. And Oscar, being the last one to incarnate in my little family group, said goodbye to his brothers at the waiting gate, the heaven's gate. So yeah, I think it's possible. Thanks, Liz. Great question. Last couple of minutes, folks, to get your last couple of questions in. Angeline Foot says, my daughter was stillborn 2004. Will I ever hear from her? I believe it's possible, Angeline. As I say, I'm not working as a medium right now, and most mediums aren't DJs. They sort of can't take requests. I believe that she can communicate. I believe she would have gone to that place we call heaven. And I believe that she will be able to evolve to a point that you'd be able to get evidence from her. She may choose not to. It may not be within her desire. It may not be within the experience that you're going through right now that you're meant to. But I absolutely do believe it's possible. And on a personal note, I hope you do. I hope you do get evidence that your daughter, who was stillborn in 2004, has a life after what happened there. And she can talk about that point of conception and growing up in the spirit world. But don't go chasing it, Angela. I always say, from a mediumistic point of view, there's very few mediums that claim they can even do it. And I think it's actually very difficult to take requests and to bring certain people in. So if she can, she will. And a good idea is to tune in on Saturday nights to SBTV. You get the free readings and you get your communicators, and be a part of your local church, or centre. And the more times you put yourself out there for a reading, the greater the likelihood is that someone will communicate. Thank you, Angeline. Right, last few questions coming in now. Diane says, do you think our lives are mapped out from the time we conceived until our passing? Diane, I think bits are mapped out. We did a show on destiny, actually, so go back and have a look on the playlist for that. Yes, I think that there are big things, like a project. Project Diane had a start and finish date. There was a load of things between the start and finish date that were possible for you to achieve. That could be called your destiny line. And the fact it's all been planned and mapped out, and who you're going to be with and which other souls' lives you may cross. But to a certain extent, the cruel tale is you're wiped of all memory and prior knowledge. To that, you're blindfolded, born into a world where you can't do anything for yourself. You rely on other people to feed you and clothe you and do everything else for you. Then you're given this gift of free will and personal responsibility. So there's an awful lot which can kind of mess up that destined line. But I think that there is a plan. I don't know a lot about fishing, but I know that depending on where you put your rod in the water and at what time, what you're likely to get. And I think it's a little bit like us in choosing our families and our soul groups and our parents in the womb of the mother that we choose increases the likelihood of us being able to adhere or meet some of those milestones within the project that is our life as a new human being, Diane. So hopefully that answers that, Diane. Good question. Okay. Amy says, what are your thoughts on twin flame souls? So I've got your personal opinion, which I will share. There's a couple of different concepts on what twin flame souls are or could be. Some people talk about twin flames almost being like the same soul that splits and continually incarnate through multiple sort of periods and times of life. Other people talk about it as being two totally different souls that are in absolute unconditional love with each other and look to find each other in the cruel sort of world of planet Earth experience on the training planet, and they hunt each other down for that unconditional love. So I certainly believe in soul groups, Amy, because I believe in the concepts of reincarnation, and I think that why wouldn't you? If I choose my own immediate family, if you've enjoyed the experience and company of those people, a bit like a theme park, why wouldn't you do Planet Earth theme park again? And this time you say, well, this time I'm going to be a man or a woman, or I'm going to be, neither, because it's 2022 and we can identify with whoever we want, non-binary. I'm going to go for that. I'm going to do it this time where you're the mum and I'm the child, or you're the uncle. So I think soul groups exist, and I think that there is evidence from some people's past life regression about people who are in love with each other in this life and experience that have previously been in love with each other in previous incarnations. So I think it can happen. I don't think we all necessarily have a twin flame, but I think that sometimes you are drawn to people and there's an element of destiny at play. I'm lucky. I believe that, with Claire, my wife, that I was lucky and blessed to meet her. Married my best friend. We've been together, a long time. You kind of grow together and you go through lots of different experiences. And we met as kids, we met at 16, 17. So we've changed an awful lot along the way. Don't necessarily believe we're twin flames, but I do believe that we were meant to meet each other, meant to have the kids we did. So thank you, Amy, for that question. Julie Caswell, there isn't a plug-in air freshener. They really start me coughing. That's the sort of feeling I'm getting, Julie. So it'd be a cruel thing because they're banned in my house because they make me cough as they do my wife, my mum. That is exactly the smell. It is so strong in this room as well. And I've been working in this office today. There's no known air fresheners, but yeah, plug-in air freshener. Would it be great if there's any working mediums there tonight? It's physical evidence that Spirit have produced not a coin or on a porch from the spirit world, but a plug-in air freshener to make Ash cough live on YouTube and Facebook. Be a bit of strange but funky evidence. Thank you, Julie. Okay. And folks, I think I've got round to all of your questions, particularly Facebook users. I'm so sorry if we haven't seen your comments tonight. Don't think that we were ignoring you, because we don't. We really do try and get into every comments. If there really is something that you wanted to ask and you didn't get to ask it, and you're on Facebook, head over to Ash Robinson Medium. Send me that question as a private message, and I will get back to you at some point. I caveat by the fact I'm also a human being living a life with 3 young kids, so I don't do everything immediately, but I will get back to you. Or go over to the fan page on SPTV. Chat with the community, join in with one of the Zoom calls. There's a wonderful, very important patron community within SPTV. You can find out more information about that on the website and join into one of the many socials. But folks, it's been a wonderful experience for me tonight. I'm sorry for coughing and occasionally getting my words mixed up, but I've loved chatting to you. I've loved sharing some of the teachings and philosophy of the wonderful Mr. Harry Edwards. Good night and God bless.